There's no one way to build a meaningful life, and anyone telling you there is probably trying to sell you something. What if I told you there are 5 things, 5 lenses that you should consider as you take that next step in life, as you try to figure out what next to do? What if I told you these 5 things can actually help you design a life that feels like yours? Not your parents, not your bosses, not your friends, yours. I want to introduce you to the SPACE framework. It's a framework that has 5 things you should consider that can help you to build a life that's not perfect, but just right. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the Men Rose podcast. I'm your host, Oba Okusanya. And today's episode is for anyone who's kind of feeling lost, anyone who's feeling like, you know what? I feel like I'm at a crossroads. I don't know what to do. Kind of feeling stuck, kind of feeling like, I don't know what next step to take. This episode is for you. See, a couple of months ago, actually, no, it's over a year ago now. I was kind of in that sort of phase where I was trying to figure out, okay, like is this all there is to life? I was kind of trying to figure out, like, yeah, I work, I have my family, I have bills to pay, you got a mortgage, you have all these things. And I started to think to myself, like, is this all that there is to life? Like, is my entire existence just to come and pay taxes and pay bills and, like that can't be it. So this video is for you and this podcast is for you if you're kind of in that space as well. And it was in that season that, you know, um, I sort of discovered these 5 things. And, I discovered them, of course, separately, but I've since put them together in such a way that it can actually help other people and, that I can easily communicate it to other people. So that's why I call it the SPACE framework. It's not something crazy. It's just ideas that I've had and I've put into a framework because I feel like if it's properly packaged, it's easier to convey that to you. So let's get into it. So, a couple of years ago, I remember this happened to me, right? My parents had bought me a pair of shoes. This is probably over 7 years ago. There was a pair of shoes my parents had bought me, a pair of leather loafers, and they were gorgeous. They were absolutely beautiful shoes. Like I love dressing well. I believe everyone should dress well, at least have a good fashion sense, right? So, uh, pair of beautiful loafers, like they were just like the perfect pair of shoes, in terms of you could wear them casually, you could also like dress them up, but they were so uncomfortable. And the reason why they were uncomfortable is because they were not actually my size. They didn't fit right, you know, but because of how they looked, I'm like, these are so good looking that I'm not just gonna not wear it. I'm gonna wear it and just like deal with the pain. But a lot of people would compliment me. I'm like, whoa, those are amazing shoes. Wow, where did you get those? I get so much compliments, so much like interest in like, oh, I want a pair of those too. But what a lot of people didn't know was that the shoes hurt a lot. And I would get home and I'd have blisters. And I'm like, thinking about this now, it's kind of synonymous to the way some of us have lived our lives up until this point, in the sense that the lives we're living are not really ours. There's society's expectations, there's expectations of friends and family. And because of all of that, you've sort of taken on things in life that maybe actually don't fit right. But because they look good, you're willing to do it. And in the short term, you can probably get through the pain like I did with the shoes. But in the long term, it's going to hurt a lot more, and it's not a way to live. So this SPACE framework, and even just applying the SPACE framework into the analogy, into the story that I just gave you, that I just told about the shoes that were ridiculously tight for me that I decided to wear because I wanted to look good. In that case, what you don't need pressure. You don't need much more pressure when you're in a time where you feel stuck and you're trying to figure out what to do. In a time where you feel stuck, you need space, right? So this space framework, I believe, can help you try to figure out what step to take out of the place where you're stuck. And, the philosophy of the Many Roads podcast and the Many Roads in general is that there's not one linear path to fulfillment. There's not just one special formula to building a life, that's right. So one person's approach might not work for the other person in the sense that you can't copy all the steps they took to get to the exact place that they are because that's not your life. However, the space framework, what it does is it helps you sort of look at your life specifically through these lenses and helps you sort of figure out, okay, this is probably the path forward. So let's get into it. Enough talking. Let's get into it. The first one, space in the space framework, is S, which stands for service. If you're feeling stuck, you're feeling down, you're feeling like I don't know what next to do, I want you to ask yourself this question. Who could I be serving? Think about that for a moment. By by even thinking about service, you take the focus away from yourself and you immediately put it on others. And what does that do? That frees up your mind to think about the issues that other people have. Think about the problems that other people are facing, the challenges that other people have. It takes you out of your own life and it sort of helps you sort of, it sort of puts you in a higher point of view where you start to realize I'm not the only one going through whatever it is that I'm going through, number one. But number two, even though I'm going through what seems like a tough time, in one way, shape, or form, I can also help somebody else who's going through something. And there's a sense of fulfillment that comes from helping others. And that sense of fulfillment cannot be duplicated, it cannot be matched. I mean, this is why people volunteer. This is why people go build, houses and hospitals in developing countries. And this is why people go to the food shelter and donate. This is why people serve, because in every human heart is a gap, is a space that's reserved for the fulfillment that comes from serving. So if you're feeling stuck, I want you to ask yourself, who could I be serving in this season? What is it that you can do to make somebody's life better? What can you help with? What can you do? And it could be anything. I mean, you would have to sort of look through your life and look at the skills that you have and the abilities and accesses and essentially the things that God has put in your life. And I want you to ask yourself deeply, what could I be doing in this season to serve others? Because life is not just about us. If you're going through life only focused on what is going to benefit you and your family, like that's not a way to live life. That's a way to lead a very sad existence. But if you know that you actually want to make impact and you want to affect other people and impact their lives and play a little bit of a part in their story, you're going to have to serve. And this could be, in whatever capacity that you find, serve. And when it comes to service, people make it seem like it's only, you're serving in the military or you're serving in government or you're serving in the not-for-profit sector. But recently I was watching a video by Gary Vee, right? And he was talking to a sales representative who had asked a question, and the guy essentially responded by pitching his product and pitching himself. And Gary Vee was like, hey, I get that you're a sales guy, but can you approach this conversation from the standpoint of the fact that you want to serve me? And it really got me thinking about how serving people, for instance, in business is probably the best way to go about it, as opposed to trying to force products down people's throats. So even in business, you are serving people. You are meeting a need, and in exchange for that need they pay you dollars, they pay you some money, but at the core of it, it is service. You are serving people. So I want you to ask yourself, who could I be serving? Ask yourself, where can I be useful with what I already have in my hands? Like, with what already is in my life, what else can I use this to do? Where else can I be useful? Who can I serve? I want you to ask yourself that. That's the first lens of the framework. So you have a business idea you're excited about. But hold on, here's the truth. About 90% of startups fail because they build something nobody wants. What if you could test your idea before you build it? What if you could test your idea before you waste months or thousands of dollars building it? I've put together a free guide called the Reality Check Guide that essentially has 10 validation methods you can use to test any business idea today. In it, you'll find validation methods used by Tesla, Dropbox, Airbnb, and other notable names around the world before they became household names. I've also included AI prompts that you can use to validate or test your ideas using ChatGPT or any other AI platforms. So get access to the free guide. The link is in the description. Download the guide and use it to test your ideas before you go waste money and time. All right, let's get back to the pod. Now moving on to the second one. The P in the SPACE framework stands for personal growth. And with personal growth, I want you to ask yourself the question, who am I becoming? We all go through seasons in life where it feels like we're making no progress at all. But one thing I've realized is that in the seasons that often feel the hardest, that feel like you're barely seeing any progress, those are the seasons that are the most important for your growth. Those are the seasons where the efforts that you've been putting towards developing yourself matter the most. Because, there's this idea that, and it's not an idea, it's a reality. When you plant a seed, it takes some time before you see the seed develop into a plant and then into a tree, and then before it starts bearing fruits. But in the time that it takes before you start to see a physical evidence of the seeds that you planted, it doesn't mean stuff is not going on. The issue is it's going on beneath the surface and you can't see it. But because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not going on. Because you can't see the growth doesn't mean you're not growing. Because you can't see the progress in terms of where you used to be and where you are now doesn't mean you're still in the same place. It doesn't. There's growth happening as long as you're intentional about growing. And if you're stuck, if you're in a place where you're trying to figure out your next move, I want you to ask yourself this question: who am I becoming? Because by asking yourself this, you're essentially peeling back the layers of, okay, this is what I think my reality is, and this is actually what's going on. You might feel stuck because you're not seeing progress, but there might be real growth that's actually going on underground. And sometimes, in most cases, actually, all you kind of need to do is just hold on. All you kind of need to do is just stay the course and be consistent in what you're doing. I know it sucks. I know it's difficult. This is the part that nobody talks about. Everyone, talks about consistency on the internet like it's this thing that, I just get in the mood and I'm all of a sudden I'm consistent. Yay. But it's so difficult. It's so hard. But unfortunately, that's where the gains come from. That's where the results come from. That's where the progress comes from. It's by doing the hard things over and over again. There's just no way to sugarcoat it. This is where the discipline also comes in, right? So there's personal growth. If you want to get out of a place where you're feeling stuck, you might have to, if you're already not, you might have to invest in your personal growth. And what does that look like? However you want to grow, whatever area you want to grow in, find what is required for you to grow in that area. For instance, if you want to grow in your ability to think, read a lot more. If you want to grow in your ability to speak, practice, you know, watch tutorials, watch videos, buy courses. If you want to grow in your ability to, I guess, run a business, go for some trainings, like just do something other than the norm. There's that law in physics that like an object will remain at rest unless it's acted upon by an external force. If you feel stuck, you need an external force to keep you moving. And in some cases, it's investing in your personal growth that gets you out of that funk and into a place where you feel like, you know what? Okay, I'm finally making progress. So invest in your personal growth. And a quick aside here, as I'm thinking about this and talking about investing in your personal growth, I remember that even this podcast and the newsletter that we now run as well is actually a result of a season of just significant personal growth. I just decided to go all in on developing myself, and I was like, you know what? I identified the skills that I have, and one of them was writing, and one of them was speaking. And I said, you know what? How can I best use these skills? And I bought books, I bought courses, I paid mentors, I did everything. And this that you're seeing today is actually a result of that season, right? So you never know what could come out of all of that, but you do need to take a chance in yourself and invest in yourself and in your personal development and in your self-development. It's so important. I can't stress this enough. All right, let's get to the A in the space framework. The A in the space framework stands for autonomy, or you could call it freedom, right? I want you to ask yourself the question, how much freedom do I have? If you're at a crossroads and you're trying to figure out, like what next to do, you're feeling stuck. Going back to the analogy of my shoes, right? Literally, my feet were stuck in those shoes, and all I needed was freedom. Sometimes when we feel stuck, all we need is a little bit of freedom. And for instance, if you're considering two different decisions, sometimes the best one is the one that gives you a little bit more freedom than the other, because there's no amount of money, uh, there's no amount of money you can pay that will justify taking away someone's freedom. There's no amount of money that someone can pay for your freedom. You know, uh, if you look at it, the most successful people, uh, and when I mean successful people, I mean by monetary standards, are not necessarily the freest of people, right? If you look at, for instance, one of the most successful people monetarily today, richest man in the world, is Elon Musk. How free would you say he is? Are you willing to sleep at a factory for months at a time on the factory, like, the office in the factory? Are you willing to have to only, like, I don't know, work 20-hour days and work 18-hour days and like, it's not necessarily about the money. It's much more about the freedom to do the other things that bring life to you. And if you're at a crossroads and you're trying to figure out what next to do, I want you to consider the freedom that you want to have, the autonomy that you want to have. Do you want a life where you are not able to see your family and friends? Do you want a life where you are able to maybe, and it's okay if it's for a season where you have to sort of focus on one thing. Maybe you're in school, you're finishing up your school and you have to focus on that right now. That's okay. That's for a season. But I'm saying for long term, what type of life do you want? What sort of life do you want? Like, think about that deeply. This is an episode where I hope I get you to think a lot, because out of that self reflection comes the decisions that will change your life. If the path forward right now, if the path in front of you right now doesn't offer you a lot of freedom, you might want to rethink it. So I want you to ask yourself this: what would it look like to be a little bit more free? Ask yourself that. If there's a specific thing you're considering, ask yourself, does this make me more free? Free to be who I am, free to be all that I feel like I'm supposed to be. For instance, if you're considering, let's say, a role in an organization, and based off of what you've seen in terms of the culture, they don't let people express themselves the way they really are. Is that where you really want to be? And short term, you might want to do it just because the money is great. And all. I get that. Like, I'm real. Hey, you got bills to pay. I understand that. What I'm saying is long term. Do you want to really be stuck in a place where you can't truly express yourself? So these are, you should ask yourself this, because one of the most frustrating things that can happen to a human being is to lose their freedom willingly, in the sense that to take a decision that ends up claiming your freedom from you, that ends up taking your freedom from you. That could be so devastating, because you feel trapped, you feel stuck, and then the feeling of regret comes in as well. You start to blame yourself. So let's not even go that route, is what I'm saying. All right, let's go to the fourth lens, which is C in our space framework, which stands for creativity. I personally believe that every human is creative. And yes, I'm a Christian, I'm a person of faith. So I believe that we were created by God. And because He created us in His image, because He's creative, we are also creative. And you can see this in sort of everything. I mean, if you look in like nature, there's so much creativity. If you look in, even in math, there's like patterns and patterns with numbers. It's also creative. So if you look at if you look at the smallest, like you drill down to the tiniest of elements of molecules and atoms, it's creative. So I personally believe that all that is around us is creative, and all that is in us too is creative, in the sense that every human being has some elements of creativity to them. And, you know, the mistake I feel like people make, the mistake that I believe people make, is they think that creativity is only reserved for some, in the sense that, oh, only musicians are creative, only people in the arts are creative. Oh, you're an actor, you're an actress, that's when you're creative. Oh, you paint, you draw, you sketch, you're creative. No, everyone is creative. Think about your your outfits. How do you match your outfits? It takes some creativity, right? So if you're in a season where you're feeling stuck, I want you to consider your creativity. I want you to consider, is there anything I can do today that I can create? Is there something that I can create? Is there something that I can put out into the world? That is there a part of me that I can share with the world? You know, by being able to put out a part of you, there's a level of fulfillment and a sense of fulfillment that comes from that that is unmatched. Personal example, I'm a musician, right? And over the weekend, I hadn't played at a live quote unquote gig in a while. And over the weekend I got to play at a live gig and I was so refreshed. It felt so good to just be in the creative space again, you know. And you might want to think, oh yeah, it's because you play music, that's why you feel creative. No, even when I do this podcast, I get to implement my creativity. Even when I speak to you, I get to use my creativity in the way I talk, in the way that I weave my words together. It's all creativity. So being creative is an outlet. Being creative is an outlet that lets you express yourself, and that leads to fulfillment. Once again, if you're not, you don't have to be, you don't have to be a Picasso. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying all of a sudden you should go, pick up paintbrushes and stuff. I mean, if you want to, you can, if that's the outlet you so choose. But I personally believe that every human being should find a creative outlet. Recently I was listening to a podcast where Kevin O'Leary, who's a billionaire, CEO, billionaire, whatever, um, investor, he's from Shark Tank. Shark Tank is probably where most people know him from. And he was talking about how, every time he's had a long day, a stressful day, all he just needs to do is grab his guitar and just play his guitar. And he was like, the sense of peace and calmness and that comes on him. He's like, it's just, and right there, then I was like, yeah, it's your creativity. It's your way to channel out, and it's an outlet for stress to leave, and it's an outlet for, you know, worrying and stuff to leave, right? So I personally would advise anyone listening or watching to this, if you already don't have a creative outlet, find one. It could be knitting, it could be bird watching, whatever it is that you think will excite you, find it. Which actually, I'm going to digress a little bit here, because I want to also talk about the fact that a lot of us are not creative because we haven't explored enough. And what do I mean by that? You don't know what you don't know. And if you're from particular places in the world where creative projects and creative outlets are looked at as like playing around and fooling around, you're robbing yourself of the opportunity to feel fulfilled. So this is what I'm going to leave you with. I'm going to advise that, in the next coming weeks, you find opportunities to go outside of the norm and do something you've never done before. Go to a concert, you know, um, go take a pottery class. I know, like, do something you haven't done before as you try to exploit the creative side of you. You'll be shocked what you find. And honestly, let me know what happens. Let me know how it goes. But I can bet you this: the sense of fulfillment that you get from creating something is unmatched. And the last lens I want you to consider in the space framework, which is the E, stands for entrepreneurship. And hold on, I know you might be thinking to yourself, Oba, are you saying that for us to build lives that feel right, we all have to be business owners? That's not what I'm saying. No, no, no. When I mean entrepreneurship, see, I did a little bit of an exercise before recording this podcast. I was looking at definitions of entrepreneurship, and everywhere it talks about business, business, business. But then the aspect of entrepreneurship I'm referring to is the purpose of business, which is what? meeting a need. But when it comes to business, there's the profit side that is the reward for meeting that need. But I want to focus just on the meeting a need side. So when I mean that you should be entrepreneurial, rather, what I'm talking about is I want you to ask yourself, what problem could I be solving? What need could I be meeting? What problem could I be solving? Because there's a deep satisfaction that comes, and there's a deep purpose that you discover by solving a problem, by meeting a need. I don't know what it is, but there's just something that's innately in our hearts and in our minds and in our spirits that as soon as you latch onto a problem and you tell yourself, I'm going to figure this thing out. There's a deep sense of fulfillment that comes in the journey of figuring it out. And this doesn't mean you might figure it out. I hope you do, but not everybody does, right? But at the same time, it's a deep sense of satisfaction that comes from knowing that you know what, I am working on this. I see a solution. I see myself fixing a problem. I see myself meeting a need. That's the entrepreneurship I'm talking about. If you're at a crossroads, if you're stuck right now and you're thinking to yourself, what can I do to feel alive again? What can I do to make some progress again? What can I do to what is my next path forward? I want you to consider entrepreneurship. And remember, I'm not talking about starting a business. And for some people, that could be it. It might be starting a business. I'm just talking about meeting a need. And this could be a need that you see in your community. This could be a need that you see in your family. This could be a need that you see in your workplace. You could go about solving issues in an entrepreneurial way without launching a business, without launching like that's, you know what I mean? The idea is that you find a need and you meet the need. The idea is that you find a problem and you work on a solution. That right there is unmatched in terms of the satisfaction that comes from that. So to go over the space framework again, we started with the S, which is service. Who could I be serving? What could I offer them? Then you go to the P, which is personal growth. Who am I becoming? And then the A, which is autonomy, freedom. How much freedom do I have? And then you go to the C, which is creativity. What can I create? What can I put out there in the world? What can I share with people? And lastly is E, which is entrepreneurship, which is essentially what problem can I solve? What need can I meet? And I know you might be asking yourself, okay, so are you saying I have to find one thing that fits all these five lenses? That's not what I'm saying. No, 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 no. I'm saying as you try to figure out the next step forward, these five things are things you should consider because you're never it's very rare that you find one path, one, like for instance, a career path or a hobby or an activity or something that you do with your life. It's very rare that you find it fill these five boxes. It's very rare. That's why you see that most people who would say they're living the life that they're happy with, they have multiple things going on in the sense that they might be professional athletes who run at the Olympics, but they might also be DJs. Recently, we saw the CEO of a very huge company. We found out that he's a DJ on the weekends in between his busy schedule, and people were like, "Whoa, this is crazy! I didn't know CEOs are also DJs." Yeah, that's his creative outlet, So it's not like you find one thing and then that brings you all the fulfillment. No, you don't. It's multiple things. And it's in the combination of these multiple things that you start to feel like this is the life that I actually want. I'm not living the life that other people sold to me. I'm not living the life that society has made me think I want. This is the life that actually feels right. So if you're thinking of to yourself, am I going to find one thing that fits these five boxes? Likely not. But what I'm saying is consider all five of them as you take the next steps forward as you look to progress through life. So that's the space framework. And I want you to know that you don't need to have it all figured out because nobody does. If you ever hear anyone talk about the fact that they figured out life, They are lying through their teeth. Nobody figures out life. It's so dynamically complex that you're not supposed to figure it out. But what you can do, and what you do need rather, is space. You need space to serve. You need space to grow. You need space to create. You need space to be free. And you need space to meet the needs of and to solve problems. So that's what the space framework is about. It's essentially 5 lenses that I want you to consider in this season and in other seasons of your life. Anytime you feel like, you know what, I don't know what to do, I feel stuck, I want you to consider these things and look at your options through these lenses. So remember this: if you're feeling stuck, just like my shoes, just like my feet wearing the shoes, you don't need more pressure, you need space. All right, let me know what you think about today's episode. I would love to hear from you in the comments section. Yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know if this is something that resonates with you, and let me know if you're out there and you're feeling like, you know what, I'm actually going to try this because right now I'm feeling stuck and I'm looking for that next thing. I'm looking for that next path forward. Let me know what you come up with. I'm excited to hear it. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please do so. Show us your support here at the Many Roads Podcast. We'd love for you to be subscribed. And like I said, let us know what you think about the episode in the comments. Till next time, it's been great hanging with you all. God bless. Bye then.